हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम टू सिविल्स फ्रेंड। दोस्तों, सिविल्स फ्रेंड पे आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। दोस्तों, डेली मेंस आंसर राइटिंग प्रोग्राम थ्रू प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन का आज हमारा डे 4 है। डे 4 को हम देख रहे हैं जनरल स्टडीज़ पेपर 1। जनरल स्टडीज़ पेपर 1 में मिडिवल इंडियन हिस्ट्री से रिलेटेड कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस के थ्रू आज हम मिडिवल इंडियन हिस्ट्री के कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट्स कवर करने की कोशिश करेंगे। पहला क्वेश्चन है, हाउ विल यू एक्सप्लेन दैट मिडिवल इंडियन टेम्पल स्कल्पचर्स represent the social life of those days? So सबसे important thing, first read the question very carefully so that you understand the question. Now as I have discussed 3 D's of the question in my last video, 3 D's are, first we have to decode the question. We have to decode the question and then we have to identify the dimensions. We have to identify the various dimensions of the question and then we will have to understand the demand of the question. So if we decode the question properly and if we identify the dimensions of the questions properly, we can properly address the demand of the question, which is very important part in answer writing. Fine. So always remember these 3 D's. Now coming to the question, the question is talking about sculptures. करेक्ट, द क्वेश्चन इज टॉकिंग अबाउट स्कल्पचर्स। अब जो स्कल्पचर्स हैं वो कहीं पर भी हो सकते हैं। स्कल्पचर्स कैन बी इंडिपेंडेंट, स्कल्पचर्स कैन ऑल्सो बी ऑन द टेम्पल वॉल। करेक्ट, स्कल्पचर्स कैन एनीवेयर, स्कल्पचर्स कैन बी एनीवेयर, बट हियर दे आर स्पेसिफिकली टॉकिंग अबाउट द स्कल्पचर्स ऑफ द टेम्पल वॉल्स। जो टेम्पल की वॉल पर की स्कल्पचर्स है उनकी यहाँ पर बात हो रही है। करेक्ट, अब इंपॉर्टेंट बात यह है, अब उसमें भी temple can be of ancient times, temple can be of modern time, temple can be of medieval times. Correct, but they are specifically talking about the temple from the medieval times. So sculptures specifically on the temple and that too of the medieval temple. So medieval times के जो temples थे उनके ऊपर जो sculptures थे उसके थ्रू हमें उस समय की, मतलब कि मिडिवल टाइम्स की, उस समय की सोशल लाइफ के बारे में, अब वो ओवरऑल लाइफ के बारे में नहीं बात कर रहे हैं। दे आर नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट दी ओवरऑल लाइफ, दे आर नॉट टॉकिंग पॉलिटिकल, इकोनॉमिक, सोशल, कल्चरल, एवरी काइंड ऑफ लाइफ। दे आर स्पेसिफिकली टॉकिंग अबाउट दी सोशल लाइफ। द क्वेश्चन इज वेरी स्पेसिफिक बट ऑल्सो द क्वेश्चन इज वेरी इजी बिकॉज यू हैव टू ओनली राइट couple of examples of the temple and then through the temple you can mention that on that temple what kind of sculptures and what kind of different things are portrayed, and that is how you can address the demand of the question. So let's try to understand. अगर हम sculptures की बात करें, then sculptures they represent the everyday life showcasing activities such as farming, cooking, trading and festivals. So such kind of day-to-day life activities are portrayed on the sculptures of the temples of that times, especially we are talking about medieval times. If we take an example, Khajuraho temples, they depict women grinding grain. They are also there are the portrayals of musicians performing the performances, music performances. Correct. So these kind of daily activities are represented. So we came to know from that sculptures of the Khajuraho that there were some daily activities which are represented on the sculpture. Secondly, sculptures also represent the women and gender roles. What were the roles played by the women and what are the roles associated with the gender? For example, the temple sculptures, they depict various roles of the women as dancers, as musicians, as households. So we understand from these that women were also women used to perform dance, women used to perform music, also they used to do household works. So these kind of things we understood from the sculptures. If we take an example, the Hoysaleswar temple at the Halebidu, Hoysaleswar temple at the Halebidu, that showcases women adorning themselves, performing dance, engaging in domestic tasks. So all these things reflect the societal norms at that times. What were the societal norms of that time, what kind of fashion, because through the attires and through so many other dimensions we can understand what kind of fashion was there and what was the ideals of the beauty of that time. All these aspects we can understand through these portrayal of women and gender roles. Then if we see, the sculptures of that time also highlight the skills and professions of the artisans. If we see from an example of Sun Temple at Konark, the Sun Temple at Konark that include carvings of carpenters, carpenters. On the sculptures there are portrayals of carpenters, potters, weavers. So through these we can understand that there was an artisanal economy which was thriving during that times. Correct. Secondly, then temples like Chenakeshwa temple at Belur that depict the scenes of dance, music, sports, that showcase the significance of leisure and entertainment. So what kind of activities the people of that time used to do for the entertainment and for the leisure? So if we see the Chenakeshwa temple at the Belur, through that we can understand that dance, music, sports, these were some of the activities which were recreational activities which were there for the leisure and entertainment. Then if we see, the sculptures also depict the stories from Ramayana and Mahabharata. If we see an example, Kailash temple in Ellora that narrate the episodes from the Mahabharata, which blends the mythology and societal ideals. Next is, from the sculptures we also come to know and we also understand what were the rituals, processions and devotees of that time, which actually reflects the role of religion in the social life. So basically, what was the social life? There was a prominent role of religion that we can understand. This information we can get from the depictions of rituals, procession, devotees. All these things we can see in the sculptures of the temple. For example, Brihadeshwara temple at Tanjore. On this temple we can see all these depictions. Then erotic sculptures, for example, if we see the Khajuraho temple, so that represent the sculptures at the Khajuraho temple, that represents that there was a social acceptance and celebration of human desires and fertility, that human desires and fertility are sacred aspects of the life, and that had the social acceptance and celebration that we can understood from the sculptures of the Khajuraho temple. If we see in the Meenakshi temple in the Madurai, that includes the carvings of temple fairs with depictions of large congregations, and that represents that portrays actually some kind of scenes from the communal festivals and celebrations. So that is also one of the important aspects of that social life. Also, if we see, sculptures often reflected the hierarchical nature of the society. Now this is very important. If we see from the sculptures, we can see that there was a hierarchical nature of the society which portrays kings, nobles, warriors alongside the commoners. For example, if we see the Vittal temple in the Hampi, that depicts the royal processions and the battles that highlight the political and military aspects of that times of that medieval life. Correct. Now the important thing is, so there are so many important aspects of the social life we can understand from the sculptures which were carved on the temple. So that also provides insights to the social life of that time, but at the same time that also help in preserving the traditions and culture of that time, some social practices, and also that inspires the today's generation in various dimensions, including the social life of that time, the advancement, the leisure time, etc. So that we can write in the conclusion. Now the next question, it is about literature. The Persian literary sources, Persian literary sources of medieval India. Here we have to understand that it is specifically talking about medieval India. So the literature, that too a Persian literature, not other literature, the Persian literature specifically, the sources of the Persian literature during the medieval India, that actually reflect the spirit of age, that we have to comment. Now how that reflect the spirit of age, that we will have to see. First, let's see the Persian chronicles like Tariq-e-Firoz Shahi. This was actually written by Ziauddin Barrani, and the Tabaqat-e-Nasiri by Minhaj us Siraj. These two sources, both are Persian literary sources, and these two sources actually document the political and administrative achievements of the rulers of during that time. Correct. So उस समय के जो रूलर्स थे उनकी पॉलिटिकल अचीवमेंट्स क्या थी, एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव अचीवमेंट्स क्या थी, गवर्नेंस से रिलेटेड और पॉलिटिकल रिलेटेड, उसके बारे में डॉक्यूमेंटेशन और मेंशन जो है इन दो सोर्सेज में किया गया है. करेक्ट. उसके बाद सेकेंडली, if we see, the Persian works also express the Islamic ethos. If we see the religious aspect of the Persian literary source, then we can see that the Persian works actually express the Islamic ethos and the theological framework of that time. For example, Barrani's writings, they emphasize the concept of justice. The concept of justice is emphasized in the Barrani's writing. So these are the principles which are rooted in the Islamic principles. These are the ideas actually rooted in the Islamic principles. If we see, the Persian sources also provide diverse aspects like biographies and memoirs. The autobiographical works like बाबुरनामा, जो बाबर का जो बाबुरनामा था, that offer insights into the personal life that offer insights into the personal life, thoughts and struggles of the rulers. जो रूलर्स थे उनकी जो बायोग्राफीज थी, उनकी जो ऑटोबायोग्राफीज थी, वहाँ से हमें उनकी पर्सनल लाइफ, उनके जो सोच विचार, उनके जो थॉट्स थे और उनका ओवरऑल एज अ रूलर और ओवरऑल जो उनका स्ट्रगल था, इसके बारे में हमें उन पर्शियन लिटरेरी सोर्सेज से पता चलता है. सो बेसिकली बाबुर्स अकाउंट्स ऑफ द बैटल्स, गवर्नेंस एंड कल्चरल ऑब्जर्वेशंस, they are depicted dynamically and they provide the insights into the complexities of the मुगल इरा. जो मुगल इरा के समय जो कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज़ थी उसके बारे में हमें इन सोर्सेज से, इनके बायोग्राफी से भी हमें पता चलता है. पर्शियन पोएट्री, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट ऑफ द पर्शियन लिटरेरी सोर्स, स्पेसिफिकली टू बी मेंशन अमीर खुसरो. Amir Khusro, he basically was a poet. So that blended the Persian as well as Indian traditions into his poetries. Amir Khusro blended Persian and Indian traditions into his poetries that actually reflects the syncretic cultural ethos of the medieval India. That shows that how the culture of the medieval India was syncretic, correct. Then if we see, for an example, Khusro's Qawwali, this is one of the example of this. Then if we see also what we have seen the poetry aspect, we have seen the biographies, we have also seen the religious work also, correct. If we see the administrative text, manuals like Ain Akbari by Abul Fazl, he actually documented in Ain Akbari about the administrative system, revenue policies, cultural achievements of the Akbar's reign. जो अकबर का जो समय था, अकबर का जो टेन्योर था, उस समय के बेसिकली जो एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव सिस्टम थी, रेवेन्यू पॉलिसीज थी और जो कल्चरल अचीवमेंट थे, इसके बारे में डॉक्यूमेंटेशन जो है, मेंशन जो है, ये अबुल फजल द्वारा ऐन अकबारी में किया गया है. उसके बाद अगर हम देखें तो ट्रांसलेशन का भी वर्क काफ़ी ज़्यादा किया गया था फॉर दी क्रॉस कल्चरल एक्सचेंज. सी क्रॉस कल्चरल एक्सचेंज बिकॉज नाउ सी इन द अर्लियर टाइम्स most of the literature in India was available in the Sanskrit. So to understand the culture in a better way, to understand the literature in a better way, that has to be translated in other languages which is known by the people. So the like Mahabharata, they were actually translated into Persian in the name of Razamnama under the Akbar's reign, correct. And then even if we can see there are some philosophical and mystic aspect in the Persian literature, Persian literature was actually very much associated with the Sufi sense, such as works by Sheikh Nizamuddin Awliya and Sheikh Nasruddin Chirag that reflected the spiritual aspirations of that time. सो द स्पिरिचुअल एस्पिरेशंस, उस समय की जो स्पिरिचुअल एस्पिरेशंस थे वो भी हमें इनके वर्क से पता चलती है. मेनली द पर्शियन लिटरेचर जो कि एसोसिएटेड था सूफी सेंस से. उसके बाद हमें पर्शियन लिटरेरी सोर्सेज से और भी चीज़ें पता चलती है. फॉर एग्जांपल जेंडर एंड सोशल रिफ्लेक्शन, कि किस तरीके का जेंडर कंपोजिशन और किस तरीके का जेंडर बैलेंस था, और सोशल रिफ्लेक्शंस भी उस समय का सोसाइटी किस तरीके की थी, स्पेशली इन टर्म्स ऑफ फैमिली जेंडर. So that is also understood. For example, works like Gulbadan Begum's Humayun Nama, which was authored by a Mughal princess, that offer a very rare perspective on the royal women, which highlights their roles as well as the challenges they face in the patriarchal society. जो patriarchal society थी, patriarchal society में क्या क्या challenges even the princess and the royal women उन्होंने क्या फेस की, इसके बारे में गुलबदन बेगम का जो हुमायूं नामा है उसमें ये चीज़ें मेंशन की गई हैं. सो बेसिकली दिस इज़ हाउ द वेरियस डायमेंशंस एंड एस्पेक्ट्स are mentioned in the Persian literature in different types. For example, be it a poetry, for example, be it a biographies, religious texts, administrative texts, or some cross-cultural exchange which is gathered through the translation of these works. Moving to the next question. What were the major technological changes introduced during the Sultanate period? Okay, now this is very specific. During the Sultanate period, correct? Sultanate period के वक्त major technological, we have to be specific. मतलब हमें सल्तनत पीरियड में भी टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस के बारे में हमें बताना है कि सल्तनत पीरियड के वक्त मेजर टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस क्या क्या थे, क्या इंट्रोड्यूस किए गए थे, एंड हाउ डिड दोज टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस एक्चुअली इन्फ्लुएंस द इंडियन सोसाइटी. बेसिकली सल्तनत पीरियड के समय टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस क्या इंट्रोड्यूस किए गए थे और उसने बेसिकली इंडियन सोसाइटी को एट लार्ज किस तरीके से इन्फ्लुएंस किया. फाइन. सो बेसिकली इंट्रोडक्शन में तो हम सल्तनत पीरियड, उसका ड्यूरेशन और उसका सिग्निफिकेंस जो है उसके बारे में बता देंगे. अगर हम टेक्नोलॉजिकल एडवांसमेंट की बात करें तो देखो सेक्टर वाइज हम देखते हैं. एक तो एग्रीकल्चर से रिलेटेड क्या क्या टेक्नोलॉजीज उन्होंने इंट्रोड्यूस की थी जिससे समाज में जो है सोसाइटी जो है इंडियन सोसाइटी वो इन्फ्लुएंस हुई. फॉर एग्जाम्पल they have introduced new crops. So because they introduced the new crops, also for example sugarcane cultivation. Now sugarcane cultivation that saw an advancements in the extraction and crystallization techniques. जो एक्सट्रैक्शन टेक्निक्स थे और जो क्रिस्टलाइजेशन टेक्निक्स थे जो बेसिकली शुगर इंडस्ट्री में होते हैं, तो इनकी एडवांसमेंट के वजह से शुगर कल्टीवेशन काफ़ी इजी हुआ और शुगर एक बहुत ही मेजर एक्सपोर्ट की कमोडिटी बन सकी बिकॉज ऑफ दिस टेक्नोलॉजिकल एडवांसमेंट्स. देन पर्शियन विल, जिसको अरघाटा कहते हैं, पर्शियन विल. फाइन. पर्शियन विल का जो यूज़ था दैट वाज यूज्ड फॉर इरिगेशन पर्पजेस एंड दैट एक्चुअली इफिशियंसी ऑफ द इरिगेशन. सो बेसिकली आरघाटा जो है पर्शियन व्हील, इसका यूज़ करने की वजह से पानी को उठाना, पानी को बेसिकली वेल से पानी को लिफ्ट कर पाना काफ़ी इजी हो गया. एंड दैट एक्चुअली हेल्प टू एंश्योर दैट देर इज़ अ ईयर द राउंड फार्मिंग ड्यू टू द अवेलेबिलिटी ऑफ इरिगेशन फैसिलिटीज़. Then crop rotation technique was also one of the important area where the Sultanate period actually contributed, and they began adopting better rotation practices, and that actually enhanced the soil fertility, and that actually also helped improve the yields. If we see the technological advancements in the military domain, because agriculture we have already seen, military is also very important. Iron stirrup. Now if you see the advancements in the military technology, there was an introduction of the iron stirrup which helped improve the cavalry efficiency and the mobility. Along with that, gunpowder and firearms were also introduced during that period, so that also gave an edge in the military domain. Apart of that, fortification techniques that actually helped in maintaining and advancing the defensive structure such as sloped walls. इसका एग्जाम्पल बहुत ही बढ़िया है. तुगलकाबाद फोर्ट नियर दिल्ली that features a sloped walls, and that is basically a very innovative defensive design. In terms of if we see architectural and engineering innovations, the arc, dome and vault construction, they were also introduced, and that enabled the construction of larger, more durable buildings like mosques, tombs and forts because of this arc, dome and vault construction. Apart of that, hydraulic engineering, these techniques such as techniques such as canats. Hydraulic engineering was also introduced, for example, that helped in improving the step wells and the water management, and also that supported the urban settlements and agriculture in arid regions. So basically that contributed in the irrigation and water availability. Along with that, some metallurgical and craftsmanship advancements were also there, for example iron and steel production. And there is urban planning and infrastructure. In terms of urban planning and extensive road systems, they were developed to connect the major cities. The very good example of this is a Grand Trunk Road under a Sher Shah Suri's precursors that connected Delhi to Bengal. That actually connected Delhi to Bengal, which actually facilitated the movement of armies, goods, and people, and that actually boosted the commerce. And the last one is the introduction of the paper technology. Paper technology was introduced from the Islamic world, and that helped a lot. That actually revolutionized the documentation and the actually literature also. For example, that because the paper was introduced and that was widely used for the administrative and literary sources, so the Sultanate administration maintained extensive record. This became possible for Sultanate administration to maintain extensive records on the paper, including their revenue and taxation data. So that actually helped spread the knowledge and also help the development of libraries and intellectual hubs. So in a way, if we see that there are diverse contributions in the technological field by the Sultanate period, and how they actually helped during that period, and also how they are relevant and evolved over the time and during the contemporary time, that is how we can conclude. So these were the all important basically themes from the medieval times, and I hope you are writing the answers on the daily basis. I hope you will also be improving and following disciplined manner and answer writing and all the things, so that it helps you in your improvement of mains answer writing. So we'll discuss few more questions about the Indian history, modern Indian history in the next session. For the time being, thank you very much.